I'd like to share a reading this morning from someone who many of you know is one of my favorite human beings and ministers on the planet, the Reverend Marta Valentín. And this is called Knows No Bounds. You must live and breathe. It must be the first thought in the morning and the last at night when twilight descends. It must be what you search for in the darkness, the light that leads you to find who you are, where you are, what you are. It is understood already that you should die for it, but would you be willing to be born again for it? Change your cells for it? If you were dying of thirst, it would be your only drink of water, the one liquid to quench your thirst, sate your parched soul, resuscitate your empty lungs. In the dead of winter, it will be your fire, your blanket, scarf, and hat. In the desert, it would be your mirage and oasis, and even when you don't want it, can't stand it, despise it, it will come looking for you, haunt you, track you down, beg your attention and your love. For the purpose that you were blessed with knows no bounds. Only that if you are not paying attention, you will be lost until it finds you, until you heed its call and be who and what you were meant to be. The purpose that you are blessed with knows no bounds, knows no limitations. Lynn Twist is a white woman who was traveling quickly up the ladder of what we call success with her husband. Both of them were employed by a very large, very trendy corporation, global corporation. They were each making, I was going to say obscene, but only because I don't make that much, but they were making huge salaries. They had nannies, they had servants, they had boats, they had wine cellars, they had vacation homes and exotic places to visit. And in the midst of this success, Lynn began to recognize that something was tugging at her heart. Like Reverend Marta says, that if you're not paying attention, it will hunt you down. So something was tugging at her heart and at her spirit, and this move for the success we all learned to crave felt very hollow. And when she heard about an organization called the Hunger Project, which is a global organization that seeks to eradicate hunger by empowering the peoples of the world rather than, just bringing food, which is of course really important, but this too is incredibly important. And when she heard about the Hunger Project, she just, again, felt that voice, that call. When you hear it, when you know there's something you're supposed to do, and maybe you really don't want to or aren't ready yet, but you will or should. So she did. And so she went to work for the Hunger Project, and she traveled to Bangladesh and worked with a community that, like many communities in the country, had lost hope, and where the men were ready to move away to find work. And she worked with that community until they discovered a way to grow crops on land that they had never tilled before. And she went to Senegal, and she went to many places in the world. She went to India. And then she decided to become a fundraiser for the Hunger Project. She had stories to tell and experiences to share. She had met Mother Teresa. She had seen so much. She had stories to tell, and her stories and her heart or compelling. So she's in these early stages of being a fundraiser, and she gets a call to come and do a fundraiser at a church, for a group of church women in Harlem, in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. And then a few weeks later, she got a call to do something on that same day, to go to the office of the CEO of one of the largest food companies on the planet, because the CEO wanted to make a donation to the Hunger Project. So she figured out that there were flights that she could make it back and forth from, Chicago to New York, and she would be okay. And then she started stressing over what to say to the CEO. And she started stressing about what she was going to wear. That ever happened to you? So she picked out a very fancy silk dress, and she got on the plane to Chicago, and she got to this giant tower, and she said who she was, and she tells about how there was not just one bank of elevators, there were like 4 that she had to get to the top of this gigantic building. And on every bank of elevators, she could feel her nervousness growing, which is not a good combination with a silk dress. But she made it to the top, and the closer she got to the top, the quieter it got, and the more opulent it got. And by the time she got to this man's office, a white man's office, she was really terrified. They told her, you only have 15 minutes. And so behind his desk, there was the skyline, this beautiful window, and the skyline of Chicago, everything behind. But he was backlit, so she couldn't really see his face. And so she talked for 15 minutes about the communities she'd visited and the work that the Hunger Project was doing, and the ways of working as partners with people who ask for help to empower and change the trajectory of despair. And she talked for 15 minutes, and she says he didn't really seem to be paying attention. And she asked if he had any questions, and he said no, and he reached into a drawer and pulled out a check that had already been written out for $50,000. She felt uncomfortable. But who doesn't take a check for $50,000? So she put it in her briefcase, and besides, she had another flight to catch, so she rushed to the airport. She got on the flight, and as she was going down those banks of elevators and went to the airport, she felt a pit in her stomach. She felt as though, and this is in her words, she felt as though the company, which had a public relations nightmare and around their food, and so this was a way, right, making a big donation to a hunger project, it's a way that corporations, fix their image. And she felt that she had been given with that check, and that she was being asked to hold the guilt of the corporation. She made her way to the church in Harlem and walked into a room. I don't remember what she said, whether there were 50 or 100 women. She was the only white woman in the room. And she felt uncomfortable again. She looked around and thought to herself, well, these are women who don't have much to give. How can I make a fundraising pitch? Now, I've been in churches where what I'm about to describe happens. It was pouring rain outside, and there were leaks all over this room. And there were buckets under the leaks, so you could hear like the water bing, bing on the buckets, right? She felt self-conscious about her silk dress. But she told stories. She told stories of being in Senegal, where the women in a particular community had been telling the men, if we dig, we have had visions. If we dig, there is a lake underneath. We know that our wells have run dry. We know that it feels that we can't live here anymore, but we have had a vision. Let us dig. And the men said, no, that's not women's work. We can't let you do that. And then when the folks from the Hunger Project came, they talked about it and they said, yes, okay, what can we lose? And the women dug and they found an underground lake. She told stories about how this community is now thriving. And she told stories of other places where the Hunger Project works. And when it came to making the fundraising pitch, her mouth went dry. She didn't want to ask, but she did. And then there was a long silence, or at least it felt really long to her. And as she was holding her breath, a woman got up from the back of the room and came up to her and gave her a big hug and said, my name is Gertrude. I don't have a checking account. I don't have a lot of money. She said, money is like water in my life. For some people, that water is a giant river. For me, it's more like a small trickle. But with the water I have, I want to do good. She turned to Lynn and she said, I like what you're talking about, and I like you. I earned $50 today by doing a white woman's wash, and I want to give it to you. So she gave her the $50, and Lynn took it. And one by one, all of the other women in the room came up to share in the excitement of being able to help this project. And Lynn Twist says she couldn't hold the money after a while, and it was $1 bills, and it was $10 bills, and so she opened her briefcase and she put it on the table, and the women just put money into the briefcase. It was $500 collected. And when Lynn looked in the briefcase, she saw that $50,000 check at the bottom. And she realized that money in and of itself is nothing, but it comes with energy. It comes with the intent with which it was given. And she felt nourished and excited and compelled by the $500. And she felt almost tainted by the $50,000. And she took her briefcase home, and the next day she sent the $50,000 back to the CEO with a kind note, nothing. Later on, she tells a story about how after a period of time they reconnected and something really beautiful blossomed from that. And I won't go into that now, but if you want to read her wise and powerful counsel about our relationship with money, this is a book called The Soul of Money. Maybe somebody could put that in the chat. Lynn, Lynne Twist, The Soul of Money. That story and that experience feels to me so appropriate to share with you today as we talk together about what is it that we give? Why is it that we give? What is it that we share when we share our $1 or $10 or $2,000 or whatever it is? I'm willing to bet that if I sat down with each and every one of you here today or on Zoom today, and I said to you, hey, tell me how you feel about how this fellowship has done with our COVID policy. I'd be willing to bet that I'd probably get wildly different answers from you, because I have already. I've gotten wildly different answers. It took too long. We're not safe enough yet. This went wrong. This went wrong. This went wrong. These, we are not clones. We have different experiences, different feelings, and different reactions. And one community cannot accommodate all of those things at the same time. We have to be working together. But what if I sat down with each and every one of you here today or joining on Zoom and said, tell me how you feel about our mission. I'm going to read it to you, because if I try to say it, I'll get something wrong. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Harford County welcomes all who long for a diverse and inclusive religious community. Thank you, Martina, for what you said today. Together, we nurture individual spiritual journeys and commit to living the principles of our Unitarian Universalist faith, including justice, equity, compassion, and the creation of a more peaceful and sustainable world. Our mission, our vision for the future, our honest acknowledgement whenever we are at fault, and our rejoicing when gifts like this morning happen. These are worth fighting for. These are worth giving to. These are the things that each of us carry. In one way or another, we carry them. We don't live I'll speak for myself. I don't live perfectly into our principles every day, but I yearn to. I yearn to reach all. Not for me, not because I want them to hear my voice, but because I want them to hear a life-affirming message, a vision of beloved community, where we might still fight and disagree and say petty and nasty things to one another, and we might also hug one another with such joy. But we're all following along the same road. Some of us are walking, some of us are using canes, some of us are rolling, and some of us are imagining ourselves together. We have a powerful, encompassing vision that's not just for us. 100 years from now, 200 years from now, just as our ancestors had a vision 200 plus years ago of a free faith, a faith of conscience, a faith for justice, a faith that travels along with the world. We've inherited that vision. And I don't know about you, but I want every generation that comes after us to feel that there is a place where they can come in and speak about their gender identity, their racial identity, and say, this is who I am. Am I welcome here? Yes. I will say one more thing, because I know I'm taking us a little bit over, and I'm sorry, but this is something I'm really passionate about. Every single thing we do in this fellowship, every single one meets an important human need. We're not a not-for-profit, and we're not a for-profit. We're a social profit. We build community. We build partnerships. We build ourselves. And we aim for the greater good. We can grow, my beloveds. We can grow. We can grow in spirit. We can grow in kindness. We can grow in courage. We can grow in assertiveness. We can grow into our strengths and the gifts that we are blessed with and the purpose that we are blessed with. We can, with setbacks and, all the kerfuffles that happen in church. We can grow together. And I hope that as we share the messages of this year's campaign, you will hold that in your heart. We can talk about specifics later. Just know you are deeply loved, and your love and your gifts and your purpose are deeply valued. Amen, dear ones. Ashe, and blessed be.